Commander Sarah Chin floated in her mining exosuit, plasma torch in hand, carving through yet another chunk of space rock in the Kepler 442 system. Just another Tuesday for humanity's most remote mining operation, right? Wrong. See, humans in the 478th century weren't exactly the galaxy's favorite species. We were the new kids on the block, at least that's what everyone told us. The Zephyrians had been spacefaring for 200,000 years. The crystalline hegemony? Try 400,000. And don't even get me started on the void speakers, who claimed they'd been manipulating dark matter since before our sun was born. But here's the thing about humans, we've always been really good at proving people wrong. Sarah's torch hit something that definitely wasn't asteroid rock. The plasma beam reflected off a surface so perfectly smooth it looked like liquid starlight. Her heart rate monitor started beeping. "Control, I've got something here," she radioed back to the mining station. "And I'm pretty sure it's not natural. What would you do if you found something that wasn't supposed to exist?" The surface she'd uncovered stretched beyond her helmet lights. As she cleared away more debris, geometric patterns emerged. Patterns that made her engineering degree suddenly feel inadequate. These weren't random alien scratches. This was architecture. "Sarah, you need to see this," came the voice of Dr. Marcus Webb, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist, crackling through the comm. "I've been running spectral analysis on your find. The metallurgy, it's impossible." Define impossible, document. The atomic structure shows signs of temporal manipulation. This thing is older than the Zephyrian Empire. Older than the crystalline hegemony. Hell, Sarah. Based on these readings, this structure predates every known civilization in the galaxy. Sarah's plasma torch trembled in her grip. How old are we talking? Try 2 million years. Give or take a weekend. The next 6 hours were a blur of careful excavation and increasingly frantic radio chatter. What they'd found wasn't just old, it was impossibly advanced. The structure, once fully uncovered, revealed itself to be a perfect dodecahedron the size of a city block, its surface covered in symbols that seemed to shift and flow when you weren't looking directly at them. But here's where things got really interesting. Dr. Webb's translation algorithms, the same ones that had cracked 17 different alien languages, couldn't make heads or tails of the symbols. Until Sarah, purely on a whim, tried something ridiculous. She started reading them as if they were English. Not modern English, mind you. Ancient English. Proto-Indo-European roots mixed with linguistic patterns that wouldn't exist for another 1,000 years. The kind of language a human might develop if they had 2 million years to play around with etymology. "Control," Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "I can read this." "Say again?" "I can read this. It says." She paused, her brain trying to process what her eyes were seeing. "Emergency shelter constructed in Galactic Cycle 847,293. Authorized by Terran Deep Space Command. In case of total civilization collapse, activate quantum beacon and await rescue." The silence on the radio stretched for a full 30 seconds. "Sarah?" Dr. Webb's voice was shaky. "Run that by me again?" "It's a bunker document. A human bunker. From 2 million years ago. Ever have one of those moments where everything you thought you knew about reality just packed up and moved to another dimension? Within 12 hours, the mining operation had transformed into the most classified archaeological dig in human history. Scientists, linguists, and military officials were jumping through hyperspace portals faster than you could say, "paradigm shift." And what they found inside the structure? Well, let's just say it made the outside look quaint. The interior was a perfectly preserved snapshot of advanced human civilization. Holographic displays still functioned after 2 million years, showing star charts of the entire galaxy with human colonies marked in friendly blue dots. There were thousands of them. Thousands. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's head linguist, to the assembled team, "we appear to be looking at evidence of a human empire that spanned the galaxy approximately 2 million years ago." Captain Torres, the military liaison, raised his hand. "Doc, that's impossible. Human civilization is only about 50,000 years old." "We've got archaeological records." "Captain," Dr. Vasquez interrupted, "our archaeological records show our current civilization is 50,000 years old. According to this data, we're apparently on our second go-around." Sarah was studying a holographic display that showed what appeared to be a galactic war. Human fleets, recognizably human but with technology that made their current starships look like paper airplanes, were engaged in massive battles against something. The enemy ships were dark, angular, and seemed to bend space around them. "Dr. Vasquez," Sarah called out, "what does this symbol mean?" She pointed to a recurring glyph that appeared on all the enemy vessels. Dr. Vasquez went pale. "That's not possible." "What? What is it?" "That's the current symbol of the Void Speakers. The aliens who claim they've been the galaxy's dominant force for 500,000 years. You know that feeling when you realize you've been lied to by literally everyone you trust?" The team spent the next week diving deeper into the archives, and every discovery made their situation more complicated. The ancient humans hadn't just been technologically advanced, they'd been the galaxy's police force. The Terran Peacekeeping Initiative had maintained order across thousands of worlds, protecting younger species and preventing galactic wars. But something had gone wrong. Really, really wrong. According to these logs, Dr. Webb announced during their daily briefing, the human empire fell in a single day. Something called the Great Forgetting. The what now? Captain Torres looked like he hadn't slept in a week. None of them had. Near as I can translate, it was some kind of psychic weapon. It didn't destroy human civilization. It made humanity forget it ever existed. The entire species just woke up one day thinking they were primitive cave dwellers. Sarah was studying a technical schematic that made her brain hurt. But why? Who would do that? Dr. Vasquez had been unusually quiet all morning. Finally, she looked up from her translator. "I think I know. And you're not going to like it." She activated the main holographic display, showing a detailed breakdown of the psychic weapon's construction. The technology was unlike anything in human records but the authorization codes. "The weapon was built by humans," she said quietly. "We did this to ourselves." The room fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. The logs indicate that human leadership discovered something. Something so terrible that they decided the entire species needed to forget our advanced civilization and start over from scratch. They called it Project Genesis. What could be so horrifying that an entire species would choose to forget 2 million years of progress? The answer came in a data core labeled Classified Stellar Command Only Psychological Hazard Warning. Dr. Webb cracked the encryption after 3 days of nonstop work, and immediately wished he hadn't. "They found something in deep space," he announced to the team, his voice hollow. "Something that made them question whether humanity deserved to exist." The files showed deep space exploration missions that had discovered traces of an ancient galactic civilization, one that predated even the first humans by millions of years. This civilization hadn't been destroyed by war or natural disaster. They'd been harvested. Something had come from beyond the galactic rim and fed on intelligent life, leaving behind only empty worlds and the stripped clean bones of civilizations. The ancient humans had found evidence that this force was cyclical, returning every few million years to harvest whatever new intelligence had evolved in the galaxy. "But here's the kicker," Dr. Webb continued, "our ancestors figured out how to track this thing. And according to their calculations, it was due back right around now." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. "Define now, document. Within the next 100 years. Maybe 50 if their math was off." Captain Torres stood up slowly. "So let me get this straight. Our ancestors discovered that humanity was about to be harvested by some cosmic horror, so they decided to hide us by making us forget we ever existed in the first place. That appears to be the theory, yes. And now we've just undone 2 million years of hiding by activating this bunker?" Dr. Webb nodded grimly. "The quantum beacon Sarah mentioned? It went active the moment we translated the first symbol. We've been broadcasting our location to the galaxy for a week now. Asterisk, remember that awkward feeling from the beginning? Yeah, it just got worse. Asterisk, the message reached the Zephyrian High Command first. Admiral Kethvar was enjoying his morning narcotic blend when the translation came through, and promptly sprayed purple stimulant all over his command console. What do you mean the humans had an empire? His aide, a nervous young Zephyrian named Veltar, held up a tablet with shaking tentacles. Sir, the quantum signature is unmistakable. The signal is coming from a Terran deep space facility that's been dormant for 1.97 million years. That's impossible. Humans are barely past the throwing rocks at each other stage of development. We have their complete history. Sir, respectfully, what if we don't? Admiral Kethvar stared at his aide with all 6 of his primary eyes. Explain. What if everything we know about human history is wrong? What if they've been playing dumb for 2 million years? Across the bridge, every Zephyrian officer turned to stare at them. The implications were staggering. If humans had been pretending to be primitive while secretly maintaining advanced technology, get me a direct line to the crystalline hegemony, Kethvar ordered. And the void speakers. If this is real, we need to discuss options. But the void speakers were already moving. Their dark ships, which had dominated the galaxy's outer rim for centuries, suddenly changed course. All of them. Heading straight for human space. Asterisk, you know what they say about sleeping giants? Sometimes they're just pretending to sleep. Back on Earth, President Maria Santos was having what she would later describe as the worst Tuesday in human history. The quantum beacon's activation had triggered automated systems across human space, systems that, according to the reports flooding her desk, shouldn't have existed. Madam President, General Harrison burst into the Oval Office without knocking. We have a situation. Define situation, General, because my morning briefing already included humanity used to rule the galaxy, and cosmic horror might be coming to eat us. Hidden military installations are coming online across all human colonies. Installations we never built, with technology we don't understand. And they're asking for authentication codes we've never heard of. President Santos rubbed her temples. Authentication codes? Yes, ma'am. Something called Terran Deep Space Command Authorization Protocol Omega. The installations won't fully activate without it. And we don't have these codes? No, ma'am. But the archaeological team on Kepler 442 might. Sarah was staring at a control panel that looked like it was designed by someone who thought regular technology was for amateurs. Holographic displays showed real-time updates from across human space. Installations coming online, defense grids activating, shipyards that had been disguised as asteroid fields suddenly revealing massive construction bays. Sarah, Dr. Vasquez called out, I think I found the authorization codes. She was standing in front of what appeared to be a genetic scanner. It's biometric, but not just DNA. It's looking for something called genetic memory markers. Apparently, certain humans carry dormant genetic sequences from our ancient civilization. And you think I'm one of them? Sarah, you were the only one who could read the original symbols. You might be carrying more than just linguistic memory. Sarah approached the scanner with the same enthusiasm most people reserve for root canals. The device hummed to life as she placed her palm on the sensor pad. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire bunker lit up like Christmas morning. Holographic displays exploded to life around them, showing the current positions of alien fleets, the status of ancient human defenses, and a countdown timer that made everyone's blood run cold. Guys, Sarah's voice was barely audible, the cosmic horror our ancestors were hiding from? It's not coming in 50 years. The timer showed 72 hours and counting. It's already here. The main display shifted to show the galactic rim, where something vast and dark was moving between the stars. It wasn't a ship, exactly, more like a living shadow that bent space around itself. And it was heading directly for the galactic core, where the highest concentration of intelligent life resided. The Harvester, Dr. Webb read from the newly activated displays. A parasitic intelligence that feeds on the collective consciousness of entire species. It's been dormant in the void between galaxies, but our quantum beacon. He trailed off. Our quantum beacon woke it up, Sarah finished. We just rang the dinner bell. But the displays were showing something else. All across human space, ancient defense systems were powering up. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as space debris for 2 million years were revealing their true nature. Massive ships, larger than anything currently in the human fleet, were emerging from hidden bays and dead asteroids. The good news, Sarah announced with the kind of dark humor that only comes from complete existential terror, is that our ancestors left us the keys to the most advanced military in galactic history. And the bad news? Captain Torres asked. We have 72 hours to figure out how to use weapons we can't understand to fight something that eats civilizations for breakfast. Asterisk, ever feel like you're in over your head? Try being handed the responsibility for the entire galaxy's survival on a Tuesday. Asterisk, what happened next would be remembered as either humanity's greatest triumph or its final joke, depending on your perspective. The genetic authorization Sarah had provided didn't just activate the defense systems. It woke up sleeping humans across the galaxy. Not literally sleeping, mind you, but humans whose dormant genetic memories suddenly came flooding back. Colonel Jennifer Park was leading a routine patrol near Proxima Centauri when 2 million years of military experience suddenly downloaded itself into her brain. One moment she was flying a standard reconnaissance fighter, the next she was interfacing with weapons systems that made their current technology look like Stone Age tools. Dr. Robert Kim was teaching xenobiology at Mars University when he abruptly stood up in the middle of a lecture and announced, "Class dismissed. I have to go save the galaxy." His students thought he was having a breakdown. He was actually remembering how to operate a planetary defense grid. Across human space, ordinary people suddenly became extraordinary. The barista who served coffee at Luna Station remembered how to pilot battle cruisers. The accountant on Tau Ceti recalled strategic protocols for fighting cosmic horrors. The teenager playing video games on Europa suddenly understood weapons technology that could crack planets. "Madam President," General Harrison's voice crackled through the quantum communicator, "I'm getting reports from across the fleet. Our people are changing." Define changing, General. They're remembering things they never learned. Technologies they've never seen. And they're requesting permission to activate weapons systems that officially don't exist. President Santos looked at the reports flooding her desk. Humanity's hidden military infrastructure was coming online faster than anyone had thought possible. But they still had one problem. "General, do we have any idea how to actually fight this harvester?" "Unknown, Madam President. But apparently we've done it before." The harvester didn't announce itself with fanfare or dramatic speeches. It simply appeared at the galactic rim and began moving inward, consuming everything in its path. The outer colonies went dark first. Not destroyed, absorbed. The harvester fed on consciousness itself, leaving behind empty husks that looked like people but contained nothing that could be called alive. The alien fleets that had been converging on human space suddenly found themselves with bigger problems. Zephyrian battle groups engaged the harvester's forward scouts and discovered their weapons were completely ineffective. Worse, any ship that got too close was absorbed into the entity's mass. "Admiral Kethvar to any human vessels," the transmission crackled across space, "we formally request alliance against the thing that's eating our colonies." The response came from Colonel Park, whose fighter squadron had just finished configuring weapons that violated several laws of physics. "Alliance accepted, Admiral. But you might want to step back. We're about to field test some equipment that's been in storage for a while." Asterisk, you know what's really satisfying? The look on a bully's face when they realize you've been holding back. Asterisk, what the galaxy witnessed over the next 48 hours would redefine their understanding of what humans were capable of. The primitive human fleet revealed weapons that could manipulate time, fold space, and convert matter directly into energy. Ships that looked like standard cargo haulers suddenly unfolded into massive battle platforms. Mining stations transformed into fortress complexes that could destroy entire fleets. But the real surprise was how humans fought. Every other species in the galaxy approached warfare logically, predictably. Humans? Humans fought like they were personally offended by the concept of losing. When conventional weapons proved ineffective against the harvester, Commander Sarah Chin, now somehow in charge of a space-folding dreadnought, suggested they try ramming it with a moon. A moon? Dr. Webb's voice came through the quantum communicator with barely concealed hysteria. Not just any moon, document. One of Jupiter's moons, accelerated to near light speed and wrapped in a temporal displacement field. If we time it right, we can hit it with the mass of a small planet moving through compressed time. That's insane. Yeah, well, sanity is overrated. Besides, do you have a better idea? The operation took 18 hours to set up and required coordination between 3 different human fleets, 2 alien armadas, and a physicist who remembered how to weaponize gravitational anomalies. When they fired Europa at the harvester like the galaxy's largest cannonball, the result was visible from 17 star systems. Asterisk, ever wonder what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Turns out, you get a really spectacular explosion. Asterisk, the harvester didn't die. Entities like that don't really die in any conventional sense. But it retreated, wounded and apparently surprised that its food had fought back so effectively. As it disappeared back into the void between galaxies, transmissions flooded in from across the galaxy. Species that had considered humans barely above animals were suddenly very interested in diplomatic relations. So, President Santos addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council via quantum link. I suppose we should probably talk. The Zephyrian ambassador's 6 eyes were all focused on her with what looked like newfound respect. President Santos, on behalf of the Zephyrian Empire, I would like to formally apologize for underestimating humanity's capabilities. Underestimating? Sarah's voice came through the link from her command ship. You guys literally had us classified as harmless primitives. Yes, well, that assessment may require updating. The crystalline hegemony's representative, a being that looked like a living gemstone, flickered with what might have been embarrassment. If we may ask, how long have your people been concealing your true capabilities? President Santos exchanged a look with General Harrison. About 2 million years, give or take. The silence that followed was profound. You know what's better than proving someone wrong? Proving an entire galaxy wrong. In the weeks that followed, humanity found itself in a very different position in galactic politics. The species that had previously dismissed them as newcomers were now very interested in trade agreements, defense treaties, and cultural exchanges. But the real change was internal. Humans across the galaxy were discovering that their primitive ancestors had left them more than just weapons and technology. They'd left knowledge, sciences, arts, philosophies that made their current civilization look like a rough draft. Sarah, now Admiral Chin, due to a series of battlefield promotions she was still trying to understand, stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, looking out at a galaxy that suddenly seemed much smaller and much more interesting. So what now? Dr. Webb asked, joining her at the observation deck. Now we figure out what else our ancestors left us. And we make sure we're ready for when that thing comes back. You think it will? Sarah smiled grimly. Doc, in my experience, cosmic horrors are like bad sequels. They always come back for round 2. Behind them, the ship's quantum communicators were already buzzing with reports from exploration teams across human space. Ancient facilities were still coming online. Hidden archives were revealing themselves. And every discovery suggested that humanity's first galactic empire had been even more extensive than they'd initially thought. Admiral, came the voice of Lieutenant Torres over the comm, we're getting reports of a massive structure activating in the Andromeda galaxy. The quantum signature suggests it's human in origin. Sarah and Dr. Webb exchanged looks. Andromeda? Sarah asked. Our ancestors had colonies in other galaxies? Apparently so. And Admiral? The structure is transmitting a message. What's it say? Welcome back. Phase 2 initiated. Prepare for full awakening. Sarah stared out at the stars, which suddenly seemed less like distant lights and more like stepping stones to places humanity had forgotten they'd ever been. Think you know how big your backyard is? Sometimes you find out it's bigger than you ever imagined. As the credits would roll on this particular chapter of humanity's story, the camera would pull back to show not just the Milky Way, but the entire local galaxy cluster. And across that vast expanse of space, ancient human installations were beginning to wake up. But in the deepest regions of intergalactic space, something else was stirring. The Harvester had retreated, yes, but it hadn't retreated alone. It had brought friends. And they were very, very interested in the species that had managed to hurt them. The war for the galaxy was over. The war for everything else was about to begin. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, looking out at infinity, and couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's greatest challenges and greatest adventures were still ahead of them. After all, when you've spent 2 million years pretending to be primitive, there's a lot of catching up to do. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, ancient enemies were learning a hard truth. You should never underestimate the species that's been playing dumb for 2 million years. They tend to be very, very good at surprises. Admiral Sarachin was getting really tired of being right about bad things. The Andromeda signal had been broadcasting nonstop for weeks, and every translation attempt made her wish they'd never cracked the code in the first place. The message wasn't just "welcome back." It was a full military briefing from humanity's other galactic empire, the one that had been fighting something called the Devourers for the past 2 million years. "Let me get this straight," President Santos said during the emergency briefing, looking like she hadn't slept since the whole humans used to be space gods revelation. "We had 2 galactic empires?" Dr. Webb, who now held the official title of Chief Historical Impossibility Investigator, nodded grimly. "According to the Andromeda archives, when our ancestors realized the Harvester was coming, they didn't just hide one civilization, they split humanity in 2. One group stayed here and went primitive. The other group went to Andromeda and kept fighting. And they've been at war this whole time? For 2 million years. And apparently they're losing. Ever feel like your family forgot to mention something important at Thanksgiving? Try finding out you have warrior cousins in another galaxy." Admiral Chen pulled up the latest intelligence reports, which read like a cosmic horror novel written by someone with a very dark sense of humor. The Andromeda humans, who called themselves the Eternal Guard because apparently 2 million years of war makes you dramatic, had been holding the line against not just one cosmic entity, but an entire ecosystem of reality-eating nightmares. "The good news," Sarah announced with the kind of optimism that only comes from complete denial, "is that our cousins have developed weapons that make our moon throwing look like a water balloon fight." "And the bad news?" General Harrison asked, though his expression suggested he really didn't want to know. "The Devourers have apparently evolved. They're not just harvesting consciousness anymore. They're harvesting entire dimensions." The room fell silent except for the sound of several military officials quietly questioning their life choices. The holographic display crackled to life, showing a figure that was unmistakably human but somehow more. Commander Zara Cross of the Eternal Guard looked like she'd been forged from starlight and stubbornness, her eyes holding the kind of weariness that only comes from 2 million years of punching cosmic horror in the face. "Greetings, Milky Way cousins," her recorded message began. "If you're receiving this, then either you've successfully awakened from the great forgetting, or the Devourers have finally broken through our defenses and we're all about to become cosmic appetizers." President Santos leaned forward. "I'm really hoping it's the first option. Based on our calculations," Commander Cross continued, "your recent encounter with a Harvester scout was just the opening move. The main force is currently assembling in the void between galaxies, and they've brought some new friends." The display shifted to show a tactical readout that made everyone in the room wish they'd chosen different careers. The enemy force wasn't just large, it was incomprehensibly large. Ships the size of solar systems, entities that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, and something labeled Reality Engine, that came with a footnote reading, "Do not engage under any circumstances." "The Devourers have learned from our resistance," Cross explained. "They've developed new strategies, new weapons, and what appears to be a very personal grudge against anything that calls itself human. You know that feeling when you realize you've accidentally made enemies of cosmic forces beyond your comprehension?" "No, just me?" "But here's the thing about humans," Cross's image smiled with the kind of confidence that suggested either brilliant strategy or complete insanity. "We've learned a few new tricks too. The first Andromeda ship to arrive in the Milky Way was, well, calling it a ship was like calling the Grand Canyon a pothole. The vessel was roughly the size of Texas, shaped like someone had taken a cathedral and taught it to fly, and radiated the kind of energy signature that made reality hiccup nervously. Milky Way Defense Command, came the transmission from the massive craft. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Eternal Guard vessel Unforgotten Dawn. Permission to dock and scare the hell out of everyone?" Admiral Chen couldn't help but grin. Even after 2 million years of separation, humans were still humans. "Permission granted, Captain. Fair warning though, our docking bays might be a bit small. No worries. We'll just fold space a little. You might feel a slight temporal displacement." What followed was the most impressive display of advanced physics most of the Milky Way humans had ever seen. The massive ship simply compressed itself, folding through dimensions until it fit neatly into Luna Station's largest docking bay, despite being several thousand times too big for the space. "Show-offs," Sarah muttered, but she was smiling. The reunion between the two branches of humanity was exactly what you'd expect. Awkward, emotional, and filled with the kind of one-upmanship that only comes from siblings who've been apart for way too long. "So," Captain Vasquez said as she toured the relatively primitive Milky Way Command Center, You guys have been playing Space Farmer for 2 million years? Hey, Dr. Webb protested, we built some pretty impressive stuff. We've got quantum communicators, plasma weapons, ships that can fold space. Cute. Vasquez activated a device that looked like a wristwatch and suddenly they were standing on a beach in Hawaii. We've got pocket dimensions. This one's my favorite for unwinding after a long day of fighting cosmic horror. Ever compete with your overachieving sibling? Try competing with your overachieving sibling who's been fighting interdimensional monsters for 2 million years. The full tactical briefing took place in what the Andromeda humans called a war room, which looked more like a massive holographic universe where you could walk around inside strategic displays. It was impressive, terrifying, and made everyone slightly nauseous. The situation, Commander Cross explained as her physical form materialized in the Milky Way Command Center, is what we technical types call absolutely fucked. President Santos raised an eyebrow. That's a technical term? After 2 million years of war, most of our technical terms have become profanity. But yes, we're facing the largest devourer incursion in recorded history. The display around them shifted to show the enemy force in all its nightmarish glory. The main devourer fleet stretched across light years of space, a writhing mass of ships, entities, and things that hurt to look at directly. They're not just coming to harvest, Cross continued. This time they're coming to end the game permanently. They want to devour both galaxies, collapse the dimensional barriers between realities, and turn this entire section of the universe into what they call a feeding preserve. And our chances of stopping them? General Harrison asked. Well, the good news is that with both branches of humanity reunited, we have access to our full technological arsenal. The bad news is that according to our war simulations, we have approximately a 0.3% chance of victory. Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair. I've beaten worse odds. When? Tuesday. When I shot Europa at a cosmic horror and actually hit it. Commander Cross looked impressed despite herself. Okay, that's actually pretty badass. But this is different. The Devourers aren't just coming to feed, they're coming to settle. They want to establish a permanent presence in our reality. You know what's worse than cosmic horror trying to eat you? Cosmic horror trying to move in permanently and redecorate. What the Milky Way humans saw next would haunt their dreams and inspire their engineers for generations to come. The Eternal Guard hadn't just been fighting for 2 million years, they'd been innovating. Their weapons didn't just bend the laws of physics, they had restraining orders against several fundamental forces of nature. This, Captain Vasquez said, gesturing to a device that looked like a crystalline flower, is a causality bomb. It doesn't just destroy the target, it erases the possibility that the target could ever have existed. Dr. Webb stared at the weapon with the kind of expression usually reserved for religious experiences. That's impossible. We have 17 of them. Here's a temporal lance. It shoots tomorrow at yesterday and makes today very confused. And this little beauty is a reality anchor. It prevents local space-time from having an existential crisis during heavy fighting. The tour continued through an arsenal that read like someone had weaponized a philosophy textbook. Probability scramblers, dimensional mines, something called a paradox cannon that came with a warning label in 17 languages, all of which essentially said, "Do not aim at self." But our favorite, Vasquez said with obvious pride, is the annoyance ray. The what now? Admiral Chen asked. It makes cosmic entities mildly irritated. Doesn't sound like much, but when you're fighting something that exists on pure mathematical certainty, making it slightly annoyed can disrupt its entire attack pattern. Sometimes the most dangerous weapons are the ones that make your enemies question their life choices. 3 days into the reunion, the enemy arrived ahead of schedule. The first sign was the stars going out. Not exploding, not collapsing, just switching off one by one as something vast moved through space, leaving empty darkness in its wake. Contact, Lieutenant Morrison announced from the sensor station, his voice carefully controlled. Multiple bogies entering the outer system. Configuration unknown, mass. Admiral? The computer keeps giving me error messages. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display, which was doing its best to show something that didn't fit into normal three-dimensional space. Define error messages, Lieutenant. It keeps saying insufficient reality to process target. The main screen flickered to life, showing the approaching enemy force. The ships, if you could call them ships, looked like someone had taken the concept of existence and beaten it with a stick until it agreed to be terrifying. They moved through space like living shadows, bending light around themselves and leaving trails of absolute nothingness. Devourer Scout Force. Commander Cross's voice came through the quantum communicator. 12 void swimmers, 3 reality scrapers, and, oh hell. What's, oh hell? President Santos asked, though she really didn't want to know. That's a concept eater. It feeds on ideas. If it gets close enough to populated worlds, people will literally forget how to think. Remember when humanity's biggest problem was climate change? Good times. The battle that followed would be remembered as either the most glorious or most insane military action in human history, depending on whether the historians survived to write about it. What the Devourers hadn't expected was that 2 million years of separation had created 2 very different styles of human warfare. The Milky Way humans fought like creative psychopaths, using unconventional tactics and weaponized physics in ways that made seasoned cosmic entities file complaints with the universe's management. The Andromeda humans fought like mathematical precision given form, wielding weapons that could calculate an enemy's defeat before the battle even started. Together, they fought like something that had made impossible its personal motto. Milky Way actual to Andromeda fleet, Admiral Chin broadcast as her ships engaged the void swimmers. We're going to try something stupid. Cover us. Define stupid, Commander Cross responded while her vessels carved reality into convenient enemy-sized pieces. We're going to ram the concept eater with a black hole wrapped in temporal shielding and see what happens. That's either brilliant or completely insane. Why can't it be both? The operation required precise coordination between 17 different ship classes, 4-dimensional anchor points, and a physicist who had to temporarily forget everything she knew about cause and effect. When they fired their improvised black hole projectile at the concept eater, the result was educational. The creature didn't die. Entities like that exist on too many levels to simply stop existing. But it did something that might charitably be called reconsidering its life choices before retreating into deeper space. You know you've had a good day when you make a cosmic horror question its existence. The real victory came from what they captured during the battle. A damaged Devourer probe that contained something unprecedented, information about their enemy's true nature. This changes everything, Dr. Webb announced after 3 days of analyzing the alien technology. The Devourers aren't just cosmic parasites. They're refugees. The briefing room fell silent. Refugees? President Santos asked. From what? From something even worse. According to this data, the Devourers come from a universe that's already been completely consumed. They're not invading our reality, they're fleeing to it. Commander Cross's holographic form flickered with what might have been surprise. That's impossible. Our intelligence indicates they've been harvesting realities for millions of years. Because they have been. They consume universes to fuel their escape from whatever destroyed their original home. And according to this, Webb gestured to the alien data streams, that something is still chasing them. The implications hit the room like a cosmic freight train. So let me get this straight, Admiral Chin said slowly, we're not just fighting an invasion force. We're fighting refugees who are being hunted by something so terrifying that it turned them into reality-eating monsters. That appears to be the situation, yes. And this something is still out there? Very much still out there. And if the Devourers are forced to make a stand in our universe instead of continuing to run, the sentence hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. You know what's worse than cosmic horror? Cosmic horror that's running scared from something even worse. The discovery threw both branches of humanity into their first major disagreement in 2 million years. We have to help them, President Santos argued during the emergency council session. If they're refugees fleeing something worse, then we have a moral obligation. They've been devouring civilizations for millions of years. Commander Cross interrupted. They've committed genocide on a universal scale. Because they were desperate. How many species have we wiped out when we thought our survival was at stake? Admiral Chin rubbed her temples. Leading humanity through its first existential crisis in 2 million years wasn't covered in any manual. The question is, can we find a solution that doesn't involve anyone getting eaten? Dr. Webb looked up from his analysis of the captured data. There might be a third option. According to this information, the thing chasing the devourers operates on a completely different set of physical laws. It exists in what they call meta-reality, a level of existence that encompasses all possible universes. And that helps us how? Because meta-reality entities can't directly interact with specific realities like ours. They need interpreters, beings who exist in both meta-reality and normal space-time. The room went quiet as everyone reached the same terrible conclusion. The devourers, Admiral Chin said slowly, they're not just refugees. They're translators for something that wants to devour all possible realities. Which means, Commander Cross continued, if we destroy them, we might just be making room for something infinitely worse. Sometimes the devil you know is preferable to the cosmic horror you don't. What followed was the most awkward diplomatic contact in the history of any species, anywhere, ever. The meeting took place in a carefully neutral section of space, with both human fleets maintaining what military strategists call mutually assured cosmic annihilation, distance from a single devourer vessel. The devourer representative was difficult to describe. It existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously and communicated through controlled alterations of local reality. When it spoke, concepts simply appeared in the listeners' minds, fully formed and utterly alien. Greetings/sorrow/inevitability, it communicated, unexpected ones who deny consumption. That's us, Admiral Chin responded, trying to project confidence while talking to something that made her brain hurt. The unexpected ones who deny consumption. Has a nice ring to it. The negotiations that followed were surreal even by human standards. The devourers, it turned out, had been trying to find a way to stop running for millions of years. Every universe they consumed bought them time, but the thing chasing them, which they called the final hunger, was always getting closer. We offer compact/desperation/mutual survival, the entity communicated. Unite consumption with creativity. Flee together to place beyond final hunger reach. They want us to help them run away, Dr. Webb translated. To somewhere beyond the reach of this final hunger. And where exactly would that be? Commander Cross asked. The answer, when it came, was both brilliant and completely insane. They wanted to break the universe. Not destroy it, break it. Create a fundamental crack in the structure of reality itself that would lead to a space beyond space, where neither the final hunger nor any other cosmic entity could follow. That's. President Santos struggled for words. That's either the most brilliant plan ever conceived or it would destroy everything that has ever existed. Both/certainty/hope, the devourer confirmed. All realities end when final hunger arrives. This way, some survive in beyond place. You know you're having a weird day when break the universe starts to sound like a reasonable plan. The joint human devourer project that followed would have been impossible to imagine just months earlier. The greatest minds from both branches of humanity worked alongside cosmic entities that existed on mathematical principles, designing weapons that could crack reality itself. I can't believe I'm saying this, Dr. Webb announced during one of the daily briefings, but the devourers are actually pretty good colleagues. Once you get past the whole existing on 17 levels of reality thing, they're surprisingly helpful with the math. The plan was elegantly simple and cosmically terrifying. Use humanity's weaponized creativity and the devourer's reality manipulation abilities to create a breach in the fundamental structure of existence. Through that breach, they would evacuate whoever wanted to survive to a new type of reality, one that operated on entirely different rules. The good news, Commander Cross announced, is that our combined fleets should be able to generate enough concentrated paradox energy to crack local space-time like an egg. And the bad news? Admiral Chin asked. We have about 6 hours before the final hunger arrives in our reality. And apparently it's brought friends. The sensors were already detecting something moving in the spaces between dimensions. Something so vast and incomprehensible that the instruments kept displaying error messages in languages that didn't exist. All right, people, Admiral Chin broadcast to the combined human devourer fleet, time to do something that's either going to save existence or end it. No pressure. Sometimes the only way out is through. Other times, the only way out is to break the fundamental laws of reality. Same principle, bigger scale. What emerged from meta-reality made the devourers look like friendly puppies by comparison. The final hunger wasn't a creature or an entity, it was a process. A cosmic function designed to reduce all possible realities to a single, perfectly ordered state: nothingness. It moved through dimensions like a slow-motion explosion of absolute ending, leaving behind spaces where even the concept of existence forgot how to exist. "That's not possible," Dr. Webb muttered, staring at sensor readings that kept contradicting themselves. "Nothing can be that comprehensively negative." "Final hunger is not being," the Devourer representative explained, its mental voice tinged with what might have been cosmic-level terror. "Is process of unmaking. Converts all possibility to single certainty. Nothing." "Well," Admiral Chin said with the kind of calm that only comes from being completely out of reasonable options, "that's terrifying. How long until it reaches us?" The answer appeared as a countdown in everyone's minds: 45 minutes and 23 seconds and falling. 45 minutes, Commander Cross announced. "That's our window. After that, this entire section of reality gets a very permanent makeover." The combined fleet moved into position around the carefully calculated breach point, where humanity's most advanced physics would meet Devourer reality manipulation in an attempt to break the universe in a very specific, controlled way. "Remember," Admiral Chin broadcast to all ships, "we're not trying to destroy reality, we're trying to give it a new door. A door that leads somewhere the final hunger can't follow. You know you're living in interesting times when breaking the universe counts as a careful, measured response." The operation began with humanity doing what it does best, something that should have been impossible. Every human vessel in both fleets fired simultaneously, creating a web of weaponized paradoxes that made local space-time extremely confused about its own existence. The Devourers added their own reality-warping abilities, stretching the fabric of existence until it began to fray at the edges. And then, impossibly, beautifully, catastrophically, it worked. Reality cracked. Not broke, not shattered, but cracked like an egg, revealing something beyond the shell. Through the breach they could see. Well, see wasn't really the right word. They could perceive a space that operated on entirely different principles, where the final hunger's process of absolute ending simply didn't apply. "All ships," Admiral Chin broadcasted, "this is it. Voluntary evacuation to whatever that is. Anyone who wants to stay and face the final hunger is welcome to do so, but I strongly recommend the alternative." The exodus that followed was the largest migration in the history of any reality. Humans, Devourers, and any alien species smart enough to recognize a lifeboat when they saw one poured through the breach into a new type of existence. The final hunger arrived just as the last ships passed through. For a moment, the cosmic process paused, as if surprised to find its carefully ordered universe suddenly missing most of its contents. Then reality sealed itself behind them, leaving the final hunger alone with its perfectly ordered nothingness. Sometimes the best victory is a strategic retreat, especially when your strategy involves escaping to an entirely different type of existence. What they found on the other side was, well, calling it a universe wasn't quite right. It was more like a cosmic playground where the laws of physics were more like polite suggestions. "So," President Santos said as she stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, watching stars that sang and planets that danced in impossible orbits, "I guess we're all refugees now." Admiral Chin nodded, watching a squadron of Devourer vessels play what looked like cosmic tag with a human exploration fleet. "Could be worse. At least our new neighbors have stopped trying to eat our consciousness." The new reality operated on principles of cooperative creativity rather than competitive survival. Species that had been enemies found themselves working together to explore possibilities that hadn't existed in the old universe. The Devourers, freed from their desperate flight from the final hunger, had become enthusiastic collaborators in building new types of worlds. "Admiral," came Lieutenant Morrison's voice over the comm, "we're getting reports from the outer exploration fleets. They found something you need to see." "Define something, Lieutenant." "Other refugees, ma'am. Apparently, we weren't the first reality to figure out the escape trick." The display screen showed a vast collection of ships, stations, and entities from realities so alien they defied description. Survivors from universes where time ran backwards, where mathematics was based on poetry, where consciousness was a fundamental force like gravity. "It's like a cosmic refugee camp," Dr. Webb observed, For everyone who ever figured out how to escape the final hunger. Sometimes home isn't a place you come from. Sometimes it's a place you build together after running away from cosmic horror. 6 months later, the combined human refugee civilization had established something unprecedented. A collaborative multi-reality democracy where species that had never existed in the same universe worked together to build something entirely new. Admiral Sarah Chin stood in the command center of what was now called the Reality Coordination Council, watching reports come in from exploration missions to universes that were being born from pure possibility. Status report, she called to her mixed-species bridge crew. The Zephyrians have successfully established a colony on a planet made entirely of sentient music, reported her aide, a devourer who had chosen the name Steve for reasons nobody quite understood. The crystalline hegemony is building cities in 17 dimensions simultaneously, and the humans from both galaxies have started a collaborative project to weaponize friendship. Weaponize friendship? Apparently, the combination of Milky Way creativity and Andromeda precision can create emotional resonance weapons that make cosmic entities want to help instead of devour things. The first prototype made a reality scraper apologize for existing too loudly. Sarah shook her head and smiled. Even in a new type of universe, humans were still finding ways to surprise everyone. And the final hunger? She asked. Still processing the old reality into perfectly ordered nothingness. According to our sensors, it should finish sometime next Tuesday. The thought was simultaneously sobering and liberating. Their old universe was gone, ended by a force that existed only to end things. But they had escaped to something better, a place where cooperation replaced competition, where diversity was celebrated instead of consumed. Admiral, Steve added, we're also getting reports of new breaches opening up. More realities are figuring out the escape trick. Then we'd better prepare to welcome them. After all, Sarah looked out at the impossible vista of their new reality, where hope had become a fundamental force and creativity was literally reshaping the laws of physics. We're going to need all the help we can get. For what? Building something better than what we left behind. You know what's more satisfying than defeating cosmic horror? Creating something so beautiful that cosmic horror decides it wants to join the art project instead. The end. Or the beginning, but wait, there's one more thing. Deep in the quantum static between realities, something new was stirring. Something that had learned from watching the final hunger's failure. Something that understood that the greatest threat to order wasn't chaos, it was cooperation. And it was very, very interested in this new reality where impossible things had become commonplace. Sometimes, escaping one cosmic horror just means making room for the next one to evolve.